there is a lot of opportunity across the country, but of course, because of historical reasons, Bangalore is a major hub of innovation, and that Bangalore indeed has been at the cutting edge of many of these technologies for quite some time. What is interesting is that Bangalore and its expansion has now created an ecosystem and hub of human capital that is indeed cutting edge by world standards. You know, other than Israel and maybe the Silicon Valley, this is pretty much one of the world's best human capital hubs, infrastructure problems notwithstanding. So I would argue that we need more Bangalores across the country, but Bangalore itself is now really needs to leverage on the extraordinary amount of entrepreneurship, human capital that already now exists here.
So I think nobody questions the status of Bangalore as Silicon Valley of India, as a center of innovation, and the nature of jobs itself is changing from being a back office to being the center of innovation globally. But Yogendraji, this is one side of the picture, but politically, sociologically, there is also that vast amount of India which is just not captured in any of this data. And so where do you see Karnataka within the larger national context currently on this? The digital divide, if you like.
Thanks for asking, Nalin, because I wasn't sure why I was on this panel. When I got the title, I said, look, I know nothing about it. Please move me to some other panel. I can say something about employment, yes, but digital transformations, etc. I mean, I can barely manage my phone. So I'm clearly the wrong person to answer questions on digital transformations and so on. On the larger issue of employment, unlike him, my only advantage, I mean, both of them have all the advantages because they are experts. My only advantage is that I can speak politics. And therefore, I can also speak some truth. Let's begin with just 3 or 4 straightforward things. Number one, we are staring at a job crisis in this country, not merely in Karnataka, all over the country. Let's stop fudging the data. Let's stop fooling ourselves. We are looking at a huge job crisis. Number two, let's acknowledge that this is not limited to one government. This has been the case for quite some time. The only difference is that the previous Prime Minister was honest. He said we have a jobless growth. This Prime Minister, I think while leading a job loss growth, claims to do the opposite. That's the only difference. Otherwise, the situation is quite the same. So no one single regime can be blamed for the situation here. Number three, let's understand that at the heart of this situation is the very model of what we call development. What we celebrate in rooms like this is the reason for unemployment in this country. The job crisis is not because of our failure to achieve what we want to achieve. It is precisely because of our success in achieving what we call development that we have a job crisis in the country. And therefore, let's agree to shift substantially.
From where you sit with Axis Bank, which is as an important banker, as an economist, how do you see this picture unfolding and the challenges before us?
So a couple of things. First, my thanks to Times Now for this wonderful opportunity of interacting with all of you. Secondly, Yogendra Saab, I'm not an expert, I'm only an economist. So third, from an economics perspective, I think, let me address this indirectly. I think we've been thinking about this digital disruption. What is it which is different this time? Because, I mean, Industrial Revolution 4, we've been here before. I mean, 1, 2, 3. Is something different this time? So, I mean, I can see 2 things. One is the speed of change. That is, I mean, absolutely the first took 30 years, the second took 10 years, the third probably 3 years. We're now talking of months, which is the seize the moment thing, which is true. The second thing, which is different this time, I think, is a change in business models. So, I mean, the marketplaces now, economics of networks, information economics, information asymmetries. And this is where Bengaluru is so different. I mean, both the major the marketplaces for retail and for transport originate in the city. and many, many other examples. So let me leave it at that for this time being, other than the question of jobs. But this is the core problem that we need to address.
Sanjeev, you are part of the the framework working group of the G20. So you are seeing this also from a global perspective. One of the big issues that's happening is that the big concern with the digital disruption is that those with low-skilled jobs will fall out, and those are always the disadvantaged and the poor, the agricultural poor that come to the cities, and it's only the high end who will now have jobs. How is that correct, or is that are we overstating the concerns?
So I think there is a lot of myths about technology change. One of the points about technology change, in fact, is allowing relatively low-skilled workers to do high-skilled jobs. And by the way, this has always been true. So if you went to the very first industrial revolution, what happened? Essentially, English and Scottish farm workers who were being thrown out by from their farms because their lands were being taken over by the landlords, they were suddenly deployed into factories, and suddenly technology allowed them to compete with high-skilled Indian artisans. So it was relatively low-skilled British workers going to Manchester, competing with high-skilled artisans. So technology really allows low-skilled workers to rapidly move up the value chain.
It might sound very easy to reskill and so on, but there's an argument being made by Manish Sabharwal for Team Lease, for example, that India doesn't really have a jobs crisis, but a wages crisis. And also the education thing. I mean, how easy is it for, people at the top end of the spectrum may reskill themselves much faster, but those at the bottom, this divide, how are you going to bridge this in the Indian context?
I think those who think there is no job crisis in this country should travel with me for the next 5 days to Karnataka. I think we just don't need to argue that very much. I don't know why we keep, certain things can be argued in English language very easily. The moment you go to a village and start speaking any of those Indian languages, much of that argument disappears. These are bogus arguments. The real problem, I think, is this, that Indian elite for far too long has been in the habit of vicariously living someone else's life. They tend to believe that we are living Europe's life only about 400 years later. That's not what we are doing. This we need to understand. The real crisis is, I think you rightly pointed out about a certain kind of neutrality of technology to skills. The other thing we need to understand, and that's absolutely basic, and I'm no technology expert, there is nothing called cutting-edge technology. There is nothing called advanced technology. Technology is always geared to the requirement of one particular kind of society. The cutting-edge technology that we have known so far happens to come from that part of the world which is capital rich and labor scarce. So whatever is called advanced technology happens to suit the requirement of that kind of society. We are labor rich and capital short. My definition of advanced technology has to be entirely different.
The point that he's making, it might be far more acute in the case of India with all its wide disparities, but fundamentally it's a problem that every society in the world is currently facing, including the Americans.
So I don't think the argument for lifelong learning is that we shouldn't invest in people being able to do basic arithmetic. So that's not a meaningful argument even. So let me come to the more substantive point, which one can argue about at least, which is this idea that somehow technology and development is some sort of a ladder, and that we need to climb it one step at a time. So I have a somewhat completely radical view on this, that much of what development is about leapfrogging. So we do not have to go through the fixed line phase in order to become mobile telephony ready. So we need to think about leapfrogging, and incidentally, this idea that all the technologies being developed abroad are therefore not relevant to us is completely bogus. We have to be at the cutting edge. This idea that we can do only farm to factory is wrong. We need to think farm to frontier. And that is why Bangalore is important.
There's a complete misunderstanding. The point is not about, the whole point about leapfrogging arises from the imagination as if we are on the same line. The point I'm making is not that we do not need advanced technology. I think you completely misunderstood. That's probably when paradigms are different, it takes time to understand each other. What I'm saying is that we are on two different roads altogether. For our kind of country, our criteria of what technology suits us has to be dictated by our need. Maybe some of what is called advanced technology is something we need. We should grab it. But maybe some of the advanced technology which the whole world wants to celebrate, we should just junk it. It has to be my need, my context, my situation which should dictate. That's all I'm saying.
Point taken. I think there is a point of congruence between what both of you are saying. I just want to get you in on the question of jobs, and then we'll throw it open to the audience after your intervention on this. The Times of India today is carrying some data saying, it's headlined, "Why India's factory jobs are safe from robots." And essentially the idea here is that, or at least this data is saying, that the level of automation in Indian factories across sectors is far less compared to, say, South Korea and others. So for some time now, it's insulated, although it's changing very fast. What I want to understand from you is, which are the sectors which are being hit the most by digital disruption?
So again, let me again approach this a little indirectly. We economists are good at that. So the first thing is, in India, remember, I mean, whatever is happening with technology in the developed markets, they have reason to worry. Remember that the drivers of productivity in the 20th century in the advanced economies were things like electricity, transport, education. Education is extremely important. Female participation, etc. So they are right up there. I mean, they're more or less plateaued out on that. We are just about beginning. The whole field is open for us. One of the areas that has been adding to jobs, other than IT, the job growth has slowed, is finance. And this is one of the characteristics of technology that stands out so glaringly. It's data. We will be swamped with data from myriads, millions of sources. The GST is probably the biggest source, the deluge of data that we'll get from GST. What does this data source imply? Where are jobs in India likely to come in from? As you were saying, small, medium, whichever sectors, whatever, sector agnostic. Small and medium enterprises will be the key drivers of jobs. It will not be the large plants. You know, we see these advanced manufacturing plants in Chakan, in Pune and things, because there are no people. I mean, lines of mechanized, automated lines, there are no people. The jobs are going to come in from SMEs. And coming in from a bank, from the financial sector, I think this is one of the most disruptive things that are likely to emerge in this digital age. Data.